All right, welcome back. Season 5, episode 4. Maniac Mike and Leatherface Lee.
I'm Maniac Mike. That's Leatherface Lee.
I'm not even gonna change that around.
No, you shouldn't.
That's what it's like when you're recording on a Sunday morning. I have to tell you,
Very gloomy, rainy Sunday morning.
It's horrible. I took the dog out this morning. I was like, oh gosh, he wasn't having much of it either. Okay, so we're gonna do a dark song, but as you may remember, intrepid listener and viewer, we tried to add something new this year, which was Quick Cuts, which is a movie that we've seen. I think a horror movie that we've seen recently, but we're not necessarily going to do a full episode on it. So why don't you go first?
Okay. You're going to roll your eyes hard at this. And this is maybe not a horror film, but hear me out.
Okay. I'm open-minded.
So I've been watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy with my kids. And it's interesting watching with my kids how scary.
I was just going to say, that seems like really scary for kids.
And when you think about it, Peter Jackson is historically a horror director, having done Dead Alive. And he's done a lot of, he kind of got his chops in filmmaking doing horror films. So it's been interesting to watch Lord of the Rings and see the scene with Shelob, the giant spider, how much it is shot like a horror film. And I find a lot of obviously Lord of the Rings is not a horror film, but there's many horror elements and many scenes that actually do feel like a horror film. And watching my kids hide under the blankets many times throughout the film. And I never really made the connection. I always, I think Peter Jackson's amazing. I love Lord of the Rings, one of my favorite movies. But then I forget, of course, he's a horror director. So it's interesting to see how many of his horror roots and how much of Lord of the Rings is shot in a horror style. That just kind of made me want to bring it up for Quick Cuts because it was interesting watching my kids react, and they were really terrified at times.
Well, and this comes back to very clearly our episode 50, which was, is your subjective experience what makes the movie a horror movie?
Yeah.
Or can we, pigeonhole movies and say, okay, well, this one's a horror, but this one isn't for these reasons. So that's a great, and we did talk about in number 52, number 50 as well, the idea that there might be a different bar for children's horror film.
That's right. Some of the practical effects, I don't know if you've seen Lord of the Rings, right? But you don't like it?
Yeah, it's not that I don't. I appreciate how well they're made. I'm not a big fan of long films, period.
Okay.
And so
the 12 hours extended edition, not your bag.
It just kills me.
Right. Because there's scenes where Uruk-hai are coming out of these bags and they are the practical effects and the makeup, and it's pretty dark and scary.
Yeah, agreed.
So I just thought it would be an interesting thing to bring up. Obviously, we're not going to do Lord of the Rings as an episode for.
I think as a young kid, the orcs would be terrifying.
Yeah, it was just interesting how many times my kids were cowering under their blankets because they were watching it this could be in a horror film the way it's shot. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting one to bring up.
Wow. Well, mine is equally frightening.
Okay, interesting.
I watched. I don't think I brought this up as a quick cut. You can correct me if I'm wrong. The original Godzilla, 1954.
Oh, we did that one last episode.
Oh, did we?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh. Because I was like, I can't remember what I talked about.
The original Godzilla?
Original, 1954.
Okay.
With subtitles.
Now, are you watching this as a precursor to Godzilla -1, which I'm hearing very good things about?
Yes. That's so I remember, and I can't remember the name. I wish I had a better memory for this kind of stuff. But when I was probably preteen, maybe into my early, maybe just high school, but definitely in middle school, on Friday nights. Okay, so just to put things in perspective, 57. So there was no TikTok, Snapchat. There was none of that stuff. And often on a Friday night.
Sorry, you're 57 or it was 1957?
No, I'm 57.
Okay. Just to clarify for
Just
the
to clarify. No, this would have been in the 1970s. Thanks for that though. What was I doing? Oh, so at 11 o'clock on Friday night. So we had our local TV station, which is a big station now, but in the 70s, it was an independent, was City TV. And they copied, when they brought out Much Music, they were basically copying the American model. But they had on Friday nights kind of like a monster theater thing, and they would play really bad movies. A lot of the I remember Hammer stuff, but I also remember Vincent Price films, Pit and the Pendulum and all those kinds of, and of course, a lot of movies from the 40s and 50s because they were probably easy to get. And this is network television, right? Anyway, so I remember watching some of the Godzilla stuff because they would often show up, those films on.
Did you like them at that time?
I've never been a monster.
Right.
Alien's probably the one that's the biggest draw for me in terms of a monster film. I mean, arguably vampire films are monster films, but the monster kind of thing, those, especially in the 40s and early 50s, those atomic spiders Attack of the Ant People and like all different things, those didn't necessarily, they weren't a draw for me. I'm more...
I think you and I both like more psychological
horror. And possession films and that kind of stuff. So watch the 1945, and it's really interesting, and I'm sure this would interest you as well. When you go back and watch some of those films, like I've mentioned Cat People a few times, 1942, and you know what's going on historically, and when you watch this Godzilla from 1954, you can completely see and warranted the Japanese fear of atomic energy and all that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting to see when you watch a film that's that old, that's set in a particular time period, and you know the history context leading up to it. It's just like we've talked about when we did Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where if you look at, and David Cronenberg films are the same, they reflect to a large degree, I think, the fears of the time.
The Red Scare.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just rambling now, but
did you like it?
I liked it. I find a lot of those older films hold up. I mean, now, having said that, you've got to go in with your expectations right.
For sure.
Because the practical effects are not what we would normally see. So you have to kind of come at it through the lens of, okay, what's the story? You're not going to watch it for the practical effects.
Isn't there something like 50 Godzilla movies or something over the years?
Yeah.
I've seen one or two kind of from like the early 2000s. They're okay. Like I don't love them, but I have heard really good things about this new one. It would be fun to go and watch the original.
Yeah, that was my thought too, was I was thinking, because there have been so many, and so many of them are just derivative knockoffs, right, to get another one out there and, make a little bit of money. I think the first one is worth seeing. And I believe I'm correct in that this was the first one, because it's just called Godzilla, right, and it's 1954. So I'm guessing it's original.
Sounds about right.
But yeah, I'm looking forward. I hope that we get a chance to see the new one, because it's one of the monster ones that I thought, I've heard really good things. I normally don't go to those, but the perfect place to see it's in the theater.
Yeah, I regret not seeing that one in the theater, and I've heard it was a really good theater experience. I don't think it's in theaters anymore, so I think that ship has sailed. But yeah, it's you can come over and watch it on my 75-inch television.
All right. Okay, so we are moving along, are we? That's our quick
cuts. Yeah,
quick cuts. That I'm laughing because if you watch any YouTube, especially the creators who do sort of tutorials and stuff, they have their 2-minute Tuesdays or fast Fridays. They're never fast. They're never 2 minutes. And I think most of the ones that I follow do it as a joke now, where it's like 2-minute Tuesday and 6 minutes later.
It's like the 5-minute meeting. That's always 45 minutes long. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So on to today's episode, which is A Dark Song from 2016. And this is streaming on Shudder. I'm sure it's available in other places, but that's where I saw it.
Well,
what?
My child died. I need to speak to him.
Once I complete this circle, no one can leave till the invocation's done. This is your last chance to back out.
Seal it.
You do know what we're taking on.
I was told it was based on the Kabbalah.
We're doing something much darker.
So this is drama fantasy. It's drama fantasy horror. 96-minute runtime. Liam Gavin is the director. Steve Oram, Catherine Walker, and Susan Lonane. I'm going to go, or Lofnan maybe. Lochhoffnen. Okay, I might have to cut that bit.
That's pretty good though.
6.2 on IMDb, 91% critics, 62% audience. So
Wow,
that
that's a
typical big gap, right? And I think we probably will talk about this. So here's a summary. A determined young woman and a damaged occultist risk their lives and souls to perform a dangerous ritual that will grant them what they want. Okay, so let's start with, we both have seen this before.
Yep.
Do you remember how you came to this film? Was it?
Yeah, I think this was the days of, there was a website called Thrillist, and
Yes.
Thrillist would have like their top horror films of the year, and that would guide what I would watch in any given year. I kind of just work my way through the list.
Yeah.
So I seem to recall Dark Song was quite high on the list at that time, and I went back and looked. So my 2017 top 10, Dark Song was my number 1.
Wow.
So I really like this movie, and when I saw you picked a Dark Song, I was pretty stoked. So
I quite enjoyed this one too.
I think this is one of the ones maybe where it was technically released in 2016, but maybe didn't have a wide release until
I
2017.
think so. Yeah, I
because
think
it was
so.
on I checked my 2016 list, it wasn't there, but it was number 1 on my 2017 list. So spoilers, I really like this movie.
Yeah, I did too. Although what I appreciated watching it the second time around is that there were fewer questions for me. I can remember, and I don't know if you had this experience too, but I can remember being a little bit confused by certain parts
Yeah, me
in
too.
the film. Like, okay, what is going on? But this time, because I knew where it was going, maybe I paid more attention, but I definitely could see this time. It was like, oh, okay, I see where the pieces come together. Now, I remember thinking this the first time, but I had more of a visceral reaction this time. The male lead is such a dick, and so manipulative.
I think that's kind of what I like about it.
Yeah.
Because typically in these films, you have like the Catholic priest who's holier than thou, and
Yeah.
they're like clean cut, and they're like, this guy's just such an unorthodox figure for that role.
Yes.
That's kind of what makes him compelling. And you're like, yeah, you're such a dick. But I think that's just what makes it unique. And I think one of the appeals of this film is sort of the chemistry or lack of chemistry between his character and her character, or the juxtaposition of the two of them. So I kind of like that he's just this totally slovenly, kind of looks like no offense, but like a D&D dungeon master guy or something. He's got his beard and his baggy pants, and just does not fit the archetype of, a ritual black magic practitioner.
And I agree with you. And the thing that I like about that too is that if you go into a film with the premise that there are people, performing these rituals or whatever, they're not always going to be, the priest with the best ulterior motive in mind or whatever. Like it could be, because it's not until, I'll say that. I was going to say something, but I think it might be a bit of a spoiler. But it's not until later in the film that you might begin to see what his motivation is for doing what he's doing.
Yeah, and I think, so she wants this ritual performed, is the premise. But you can tell he wants nothing to do with it unless she's very serious. So I found that his kind of like, take it or leave it, I'll do this, but you need to be dedicated, kind of helps prove how dedicated she is, how badly she wants it.
Yes.
Because he seems to really not even be that interested in performing it. So she kind of has to work to wear him down to the point where he will do it for her, I think.
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing about the film as well, is that it seems to me that he's constantly testing her and testing her resolve to seriously carry this ritual forward. And I like that they recognize the seriousness and that things go wrong. And like a lot of times in these films, I find that they don't really do you're summoning a demon. Like nobody really takes that as seriously.
That's why I love this film. And I think, like, when I think of the last decade of horror films, like this one stands out among a few for me. there's so many times in films where they're like, oh, go get this little trinket, and oh, we'll look on the internet. Oh, here's this little ritual. Okay, 5 minutes later, do the ritual, something happens. Like this whole film is them just performing this ritual, and the amount of dedication and the authenticity of it is so powerful. Like it's amazing that the entire film is basically this. And how long are they? They're there for like 6 months.
I didn't get a real sense of timeline, but it's long.
I think
it's
at
months.
one point they reference it's at some point in the film, I think they hit 6 months.
Yeah.
So in most horror films where there's some kind of ritual, it's usually like a 10-minute deal where they're exercising something, or they talk to some elder in the town. Oh yeah, do this, or they go on it's on Wikipedia in some cases. So this just has such an authenticity to it. And I think the discrepancy between the critic score and the audience score is this is definitely a slow burn, though.
Absolutely.
But I love you have to be in it for the process rather than the product.
Yeah.
And the payoff. But I found the process fascinating. And I think authenticity is the best way to put it. Like it feels like they are actually performing real life black magic.
Yeah.
In a way that would actually be done. And I found that really compelling.
Another thing that I think is noteworthy for me is, and I'm saying this in a good way, is the inconsistency between the inconsistencies of their relationship. And what I mean by that is I found it very authentic, very real, that sometimes when you do something serious, it brings you closer to people, but then they still don't know one another. So there's still those rebuffs when they get too close. I found that very believable. It's like, okay, you throw these two people into this really serious situation, one of them who's riding the other one really hard.
Yeah. And interesting power dynamic too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. So I just found all of that to be, very authentic, very realistic. There's some, they both have an arc.
Yeah.
And it's not just her story and he's there to help her along. He has an arc, his character, which I think I can't imagine doing this film without having that, because there's only two characters and a house.
For sure.
So you've got to make sure that both of those characters are compelling enough to watch for the entire run of the film.
Yeah,
right?
Their dynamics just so interesting.
Yeah.
You're right. They're in this intimate setting for a long period of time, but they don't necessarily like each other, I don't think.
Exactly.
And it's very much like a business relationship. But then, how they navigate certain scenarios is just pretty compelling to watch.
And we find out through the film, I mean, because she doesn't reveal her complete thought process or her complete rationale for doing things.
No.
She's manipulating him and he's manipulating her.
Yeah, because the one thing he's demanding of her is like, I don't care what you've done, but you need to tell me the truth. Like, in order for this to work, you have to be real with me. And then when he discovers that was not entirely true, like it really pisses him off.
Yeah.
It's true. They're each manipulating each other in different ways.
And again, I think that's what makes this film so unique is there's a real emphasis on, I'm not judging what you did, but if you want to do something darker, I need to know what that is, because the forces we're dealing with are powerful enough to know that difference.
Yeah. And I think because this is like a Faustian deal with the devil type film, I just feel like this executes it better than almost any other way that I've seen it, because they literally invest the entire film into that idea rather than it just being like a component of a film.
Yeah.
So when I watched this movie, I loved it. And then I went and wanted to reaffirm my opinion by watching reviews. And a lot of people shat on this movie.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people don't like it. So I think it is kind of a polarizing film because I think it's a slow burn.
Yeah, absolutely.
But did you like it as much as I did? Like this was my number one of that year. Like, did you love it, or did the pacing negatively impact your experience?
For me, I agree with you that the payoff is worth the pacing. And I don't mind a slow burn as long as you feel like it's been worth the journey.
Yeah, just to push back a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't even necessarily feel like the payoff is necessarily that good. Like, I think people might be disappointed,
Okay, fair.
but I enjoyed the journey.
Yeah. Yeah,
There is a payoff,
there is.
but there are some horror films which are slow burns, and then the payoff is like, wow, that was
Right.
really incredible. Whereas I could see some people be disappointed depending on what your expectations are. It's unique, but it may not be what people are looking for.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think, I don't know if I'm hesitating. I don't know if I loved it as much as you did, but I definitely, it was above whatever my expectation level is. I mean, it wouldn't be, I don't know if it would be a perennial favorite for me. Time will tell, but I enjoy the journey as well. Like, I love, the house is almost its own character. So I love the fact, although, you know, as a homeowner, I kept thinking to myself, this is a rental. Like, what are they, look at what they're doing to the
Let's just
floor.
say they're not getting their damage deposit back.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's true.
So, because I looked at this, you know, beautiful house, and it's, you know, I guess they rent it furnished or whatever. And yeah, I just, there were a couple of times like, oh, look at the floor. It's beautiful. Why are you doing that? But yeah, I think the payoff for me watching this a second time was, I think, some of my misunderstandings or lack of clarity coalesced on the second time. It's like, okay. Either I missed a line, because there's a very important line that she says late in the film that is the key.
Which, well, I guess we'll talk about after spoilers. Yeah.
Which is the key, I think, to understanding the ending. Because I think that's what I didn't quite catch the first time.
Yeah.
Because I was so still processing what's going on visually that I wasn't processing what is she saying, what's the story that's going on. So this time it was a lot clearer, and to me, again, that was a satisfying way to end her arc.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's my fourth time seeing this movie.
Oh wow.
I actually did go back and watch it twice just for my own enjoyment.
Yeah.
And I just remember being very gripped at the beginning. Like, this thing that they are preparing for seems really serious. Like, I bought in early.
Yeah, me too.
When they're kind of like pouring the salt around the outside of the house, and you know they're going to be locked in there. I was just very intrigued by like the sense of gravitas that they had heading into this ritual.
And I think what's the actor's name? It must be
Steve Oram.
Oram.
And it's literally only two. No, I guess there's three people in the movie. The guy they rent the house from at the beginning, but then it's mostly just her and him throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, you get very brief real estate agent or broker or whatever, and then you get a very brief scene with her sister.
Oh, right. Yes, that's true.
I mean, there are flashbacks and other things going on, but in terms of people in the moment, in the current time frame, you only get those four, and it helps us to understand. I mean, again, I guess I'll save that for spoilers. So we talked about performances,
which are both fantastic. I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that both people really toe the line.
And the thing I really noticed was how effective the music was. Like, for me, the thing that was working for me and the thing that was really drawing me in was the composer and the music, and I think the cinematography as well. Lots of interesting shots of the house, but it kind of has like a cold, aesthetic to it. But I really like the music. Like, when I think because this is my fourth time watching it, like, what is it that I'm finding so captivating about this movie? And I think it really works with the tone.
Yeah, and that tone, I think that's, we've talked about this many times. You just sparked something in my head for me around, I think one of the reasons this works so well is that the tone is consistent.
Yes.
So visually, with color and texture, like the gray gravel and the stuff outside, it's I think Wales, if I'm not mistaken, that they go a country house in Wales.
Yes, it takes place in Wales. Is it an Irish film though?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think the consistency between the music, the performances, the visuals, the cinematography, all of those things are working, and they're working in tandem. They're not working against one another.
Yeah, it just has this dark, ominous feel and kind of this looming sense of dread that But also, it's interesting because her frustration for the first half of the film is kind of like, why isn't this working? And we're doing all these things, and I'm killing myself day in and day out, which is such a nice flip from most horror films that have these ritualistic elements where, it takes 5 minutes and then, the thing happens.
Yeah.
Whereas like they're literally at this for months, and it's kind of like, is this working? Is this not working? So that's kind of cool because even as a viewer, you're I was curious the first time I watched it, like, is this BS or is this actually happening? Like, is this him trying to manipulate her in some way, or is there authenticity here? And so that's an interesting thing to discover.
Because there's little, for lack of a better term, little carrots along the way to make you wonder, okay, is this working? Is something happening for them, or is he manipulating the situation? There's one scene for me, which I won't spoil right now, where it's like, no, he can't be manipulating that. That's got to be real.
Were you attached to the characters? Like, did you find them likable? Did you sympathetic?
His sympathy didn't come until very late in the film.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I just didn't like him.
It's understandable.
And, wondered, I guess it helps us understand her desperation, though, if she's willing to put up with the abuse that he dishes out for her. And there's a scene where he says, oh, this is necessary for the ritual, but it actually wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of understand how despicable he can be, or how, I don't know if I want to call that unprofessional, because he's, but he does some things for his own needs as opposed to, well, you've been hired, because he has been hired. They talk about money. You've been hired to do this thing.
Yeah.
It's not about your needs.
I think the whole time he's actually portrayed as unprofessional.
Yes.
It's like he has this skill, but he's the opposite of professional.
Totally.
He's like, yeah, whatever. Like he swears. He's like an alcoholic. He doesn't dress well. He's very slovenly. So I find that kind of interesting, but he's good at what he does. Yes.
And even at the beginning, like, I had to wonder when he rejects her proposal, it's like, okay, are you a good enough con man that you know her level of desperation and you're just pushing for more money?
Right.
Or do you actually not really want to do this? And until she pays you a ridiculous amount of money.
And I read that as he was trying to manipulate her and maybe extract more
I thought
from
so
her.
too. Yeah.
But then as well with her that she is kind of manipulative and not telling
100%.
the truth.
Yeah.
So I don't ever feel like I was fully on her side either.
No.
They're kind of both she's not despicable, but they're both kind of flawed, and just watching them interact with each other is kind of the fun part.
Yeah, I wouldn't call her despicable. She's driven, and like many people, I think, who are that focused and that driven, sometimes you're not able to see your own actions in a larger context.
Yeah.
You're just saying, well, I want that, and this is my means to an end.
Yeah. But I was kind of thinking like you were an idiot because with what you're trying to dabble with and you're not being upfront when this guy's saying the one thing you need to do is be upfront. Like that was kind of interesting.
Like you've hired him, then take his word for it and be completely. And I mean, it's also easy to understand though, considering what she really wants. She's embarrassed about being judged, or maybe embarrasses, or she's concerned about him judging her.
For sure.
Right?
It's kind of like, we're going to go parachuting, but you need to be clear with me. Like, do you have any underlying health conditions? It's like, no, I don't. When you actually do, like, it kind of felt like that.
Totally.
So I agree with the 91% critic score. Like on a technical level, when you look at like the cinematography, the performances, what the film is doing, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah,
I don't really have any complaints about the technical elements of the film.
Oh, but you're leaving the door open for complaints about something else.
No,
okay.
But I can see why the audience score is 61%.
Yeah.
So I can see the disconnect.
I think, I don't know how this was marketed overseas.
Yeah.
Because that's often the disconnect for me when I've seen a trailer or some kind of promo for a film, and then you go see the film and you're like, you kind of misrepresented what this might have been.
Yeah.
And because expectations are such a big deal in whether you like a film or appreciate a film, If you think you're going in getting one thing like the next Exorcist, that's not what this is at all. It's a much slower build than the Exorcist, for example.
Yeah. And the ending is very unorthodox.
Yes.
So I think maybe a lot of people would love or not love it based on.
I could see the ending turning off a lot of people.
Now I looked up, I was curious because there's a lot of ritual here.
Yes.
And I'm like, is this legit? Is this not legit? And I guess there's a guy on YouTube who does like, he broke down the film. He's not a film critic, but he's into like the occult.
Yeah.
And I guess
I might have seen this one.
Yeah, was it the guy, the Book of Abramelin, I guess
Yes.
is what they're talking about?
Yeah.
So that was cool that they actually took this from legitimate, like a cult.
And it's pre-Christian, right? It's Kabbalah
Yeah.
and Gnosticism.
But there was some critiques, I guess, when I guess he's painting like Chinese symbols or something on her back and in the background. So that really didn't have anything to do with anything. And there was like the 5 circles.
Yes.
Which I didn't pick up on that the first time, but maybe that was not authentic. Were they squares in the real thing? He was saying?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
But anyways, at least at its core, this is actually taken from real occult writings, and it's not just some made up thing.
And it's interesting because it brings to mind for me, like, and I don't think this is what you were suggesting, but does it have to be completely true to, like, even if you have a real life ritual, does it have to be completely true? Like, does it have to be squares instead of circles?
No, it doesn't.
Because I think there's a line there where as a director and cinematographer and so on, you get to choose the visual look. And maybe it's like, because as a viewer and not knowing until afterwards what the real life rituals were like, it didn't faze me at all. And my expectation would have been circles on the floor because that's what every kind of ritualistic thing you see is, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting.
Do you think some cultural consistency though? Like the Chinese characters mixed with like pre-Christian occult things.
Now, did you notice that before you watched or before you saw?
To be fair, no, I didn't.
Yeah, so I was going to say, for me, I didn't even notice. I just assumed, I didn't notice that they were Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
And I just assumed that they were some runic or ancient symbols that were, now, I mean, maybe it's just a visual detail that didn't flash for me and I didn't recognize it, but I don't know. If we didn't recognize it and you've seen it 4 times, is it relevant then?
No, because I think the film always feels like whatever they're doing feels very authentic.
Yeah.
But cool to then discover that it actually is based in some form of reality. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the technical. Was there anything that you didn't like before we do spoilers?
The first time I watched it, I definitely was caught off guard by the ending. And I wasn't sure if I liked it or not. I'm like,
me too.
Oh, that's interesting. I think watching it again and paying more attention to some of the things that are said, I like it more. But definitely, I was a bit perplexed the first time I watched it.
Me too.
So, yeah. Ultimately, this is one of my favorite horror films from the last decade. I think it's really good. I personally like it, but I would definitely caution. I don't think this is for everybody. I think lots of people will not enjoy this movie.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I feel very similarly that I really enjoyed it the first time, but with some confusion. And for me, this is only my second viewing, but the confusion lessened and I got some clarity around some things that I wasn't sure about. It's like, oh, okay, that's what's going on there, or that's what's happening there.
Yeah.
And I do feel, I mean, I don't want to mention it now, but I do feel like that slow journey and the slow burn is part of the messaging of the film, because I think the film works as a metaphor for a journey.
Yeah.
That I can talk about after
spoilers.
After
yes.
spoilers.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I think it's a double recommendation, 4 thumbs up.
Definitely. I just think if you don't like slow burns and if you're looking for like those traditional horror elements,
totally,
you're probably not going to get it. Like you have to be invested in the sense of ritual and the character dynamics. And there's a lot of good things there, but this is not your typical horror film in terms of why someone might watch horror.
No,
it's a very like niche.
It is.
Style of horror, which I really like. It sounds like you really like.
Yeah. I think if it's done well and you feel like your patience was rewarded for whatever the payoff means to you, then I think, yes, you'll enjoy this film. But if you're a gore hound or you just like jump scares or whatever, that's not what this is at all. It gets under your skin and it's eerie, but it's not the Conjuring universe. It's not any of those things.
Yeah, so if you're a scroller and you're on your phone kind of half watching movies, I don't think this is going to work. Like, you really have to immerse yourself in the mood of the film. So I would say if you're going to watch it, give it your full attention, and it will probably pay off for you, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. So spoilers?
Spoilers.
So I just had an upcoming thing spoiled for me.
Okay, so can we just start then? We'll get into some specific spoilers because you may not agree with me. I'm going to come back to the point that I just started talking about. I think this whole film is a metaphor for faith and a journey from revenge to forgiveness.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? And that process is not slow and that process is not easy. It's not even achievable for some people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I've thankfully never been faced with a situation where I had to consider revenge versus forgiveness.
Yes.
I can't say one way or another that, oh yes, I'm such a good person that I would forgive. I don't think so.
Well, and did you get the sense that she's seeking forgiveness for the people who killed her son, or forgiveness for herself? Like, I almost felt like she has all of this guilt, and at the end she kind of allows herself maybe to forgive herself more than forgive.
Yeah, it's not clear, but that's a great question because I do think. So I'm gonna.
And those are big spoilers. So
well, we are in the spoiler section.
We are in the spoiler section, yeah. So basically, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think one has to come before the other.
Right.
So I think this initial step is her forgiveness of herself, not necessarily asking forgiveness for the people that have.
Because the revelation at the end, the whole time you feel like someone did something to her son. But then she kind of reveals at the end, like, oh, but I was with a guy and I didn't pick him up on time, or I was late, and then this happened to him.
Right.
So I kind of got the sense that her yearning for wanting to see him and do this whole ritual in the first place was because she felt guilty.
Yeah.
Because she betrayed her son, and so I almost was wondering, is this more about forgiving her, or is this more about forgiving the people? Maybe it's both.
Yeah, I would think though that it has to be herself first.
Yeah.
And I
had the sense that she blamed herself more than she blamed the people who killed her son. Because of that revelation that the whole time she was almost maybe like, when you deny something, even though deep down you know it's right, that she was like, no, it's my mistake got my son killed.
And is she a trustworthy narrator? Because we find out in the scene with her sister that she's been institutionalized.
Yeah, I would argue she's not. Yeah. And she lies a lot.
Yeah.
And even is that true? Yeah, that's true.
Because that's what I wondered is, okay, how much truth are we getting about what actually happened? Because we only see it through her eyes.
Because I was wondering, actually, if no one killed her son.
Right.
If maybe she didn't pick him up and maybe something happened to him and he died. So I was wondering if she had twisted the narrative.
Exactly.
That did someone else kill your son, or was it your negligence that actually killed your son? And I maybe lean more towards, based on what you're saying, that he wasn't murdered, that she neglected him and he died. Yeah,
because there's a really, and I think I'm getting it right. I think the film's called Fracture, not the one with Colin Farrell. I think that's Fractured.
Oh, okay.
This is, I can't remember who's in the cast, but the story was super interesting because, and I'm only bringing it up because it reminds me of this, where you start off with, the film kind of starts with an accident and this guy bringing his wife and his daughter into a hospital and then getting a real runaround.
I feel like I've seen this.
And then as the film progresses, you realize that he's telling what he thinks is the truth, but it's not actually what happened. It's kind of, it doesn't.
I like those films actually.
Yeah, it's what's the Fincher? Is it Fincher? The film with is it Michael Fassbender? The one that you used to show in psychology class.
Oh, Memento. Oh yeah.
It's not
It's Christopher
Fassbender.
Nolan. Yeah.
I don't know why I get the two mixed up.
Guy Pearce.
But another aside here, maybe I'll have to cut this, but we were watching A Woman with the Dragon Tattoo, the Fincher, and neither my son or I had seen it in years. And it's funny because I'm a real fan of I read the original trilogy of books, and then I saw the Swedish film, and it was just so good that it's kind of like The Grudge or The Ring, or it's like, the original film was really good.
Martyrs.
There's no reason to remake it, David Fincher, especially like almost.
I love David Fincher, but yeah.
Yeah, it's almost shot for shot remake, even how the characters look. And I've seen the first film so many times that Daniel Craig actually does some physical things that the original actor did.
So this is this would be a whole other
sorry,
episode.
I opened up a can of worms.
You really did. But is it better to be faithful to the original film and almost make it a shot for shot remake? Or do you think it's better to reimagine it and mess with it? Like I know Rec, the American remake is basically shot for shot.
Yeah.
Like it's almost the exact same thing. And I almost wonder if that's better than changing things and making it different and cheapening it. Like you are almost just trying to make that film accessible to a different audience.
Okay. The last point, I can see what you're saying, but I guess my question to filmmakers is then why bother? I don't think that some of the Spanish or Japanese or Korean films that I've watched, specifically those countries, because they make great horror films, there is nothing culturally that I feel detracted or didn't work for me watching those films. If anything, for me, when I watch foreign horror, what I love about it is that there's a different approach to the subject matter often, right? Whereas when it's an American remake, you're now putting that lens, that North American or American lens. It's like, well, that's not the same film then.
But I guess that's what I'm saying. Is it better to stay true to the style in which it was shot originally and recreate that rather than put the American lens on top of something that the reason it was good in the first place was it had that European style or Japanese style?
But it's
like Rec, the remake, kind of feels like it has that European style.
But again, so my question is then why bother? If it's already been done.
Right. I guess the cynical answer would be that they want to make money.
Of course. And I get that.
Or the best faith answer is you are trying to take something that's not well known and bring it to a new audience.
Yeah, I get it.
Because anyways, we should probably go back to Dark Song because this could be a whole episode in its own.
Okay. So
I don't remember how we got onto that, but
yeah, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Sorry for the digression, but I think that's what you watch for is the banter and the digression. So anyway, the first time that you watched this, it became clearer for me this time. Did you wonder whether he was actually dead? When she leaves the house, she breaks the salt barrier.
Yes.
And then she wanders around and does a full circle and comes back to the house. And the first time I watched it, I think I was like, is he really dead or is something happening? Like, is something else going on in the house? But then this time it seemed pretty clear to me. No, he's dead.
Yeah, I don't remember enough about the first time that I watched it. I don't think to recall in that detail. But you do kind of get the sense that like when she tries to leave the house and comes back, that it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Like obviously reality has now been manipulated because she walks for what seems like a day.
Yeah.
Ends up right back where she was.
Yeah.
And so, we've kind of shifted from the realm of the reality to the realm of the supernatural. So it's hard to know what to trust at that point, I guess.
I agree, because I mean, most of my questions came from that final act, and it's like, particularly the last 15 minutes. It's like, are those demons?
Yes.
Like, and then again, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, like, yeah, like, she's just being very manipulated at that point because you hear the voice talking that sounds like her son.
Yes.
But you know it's just a demon trying to trick you.
And she knows as well, which I
Yes.
think is smart writing too. Like, it's like, okay, well, if you've done this ritual, you probably know that you're gonna something is gonna try to trick you, manipulate you.
And that's why I really like that kind of slow burn, but hearing the dog barking.
Yes.
And like, oh, but there's no houses for miles. So where's that coming from? So you know there's some auditory hallucinations.
Yeah.
And then the birds running into the windows, but I don't think they can see the birds. So you know that things are starting to ramp up, and then by the end, you just don't know what is real and what isn't real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she does, I mean, for me, like I said, I missed it the first time, or I was so caught up with what was happening visually that I didn't pick up on it. But it's very clear that she asks for forgiveness,
Yes.
not for revenge.
Yeah.
And to me, that was a very poignant moment in the film, because that's the culmination of her journey. She's gone through all of these things just to get to a point where she can forgive herself, right?
And that noble request, maybe that's what brings the guardian angel at
Yes.
the end to her. Whereas if she was only seeking revenge, she would have got
The demons.
door number 2.
Yeah,
was the
exactly.
demons. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And they didn't quite come together for me the first time I watched it. But paying attention to that shift from she's seeking revenge to she's seeking forgiveness, maybe for herself.
So do you see the audience?
So is that like a metaphor? Like the angel at the end is like her ability to forgive herself?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I read it. I thought.
That was my reading of it too, is just like her ability to go beyond the need for revenge is what brings on the angel and protects her.
And the representation of the angel to me was very different the first time I saw it. I'm like, oh, that's not how I would have imagined
No, exactly.
a guardian angel to be depicted. But apparently, I think in one of those videos I was watching that actually is a very authentic representation from like paintings and stuff of what certain guardian angels are depicted.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, that's kind of cool.
And it was like, because there are avenging angels as well, right? So
it had a very like Norse appearance.
Yeah, it was kind of reminded me of is it Ares and Mercury, the god of war?
Yeah.
That was the iconography, the imagery that I saw there.
For sure. And I was thinking of something maybe more angelic.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was neat.
I mean, so I started to ask, do you think the audience score, I understand why it's lower, but that's a huge gap. So do you think it's just because of expectations that people expected a different film and are reacting to the slow burn of the film? Or
I think it gets a double whammy. I think partly the pacing is slow. So if you're someone who wants jump scares and action and horror elements, like you're not getting much of that.
Yeah.
And then I think there's the audience that's okay with a slow burn, but with a very satisfying payoff.
Yes.
And the payoff is interesting, and I think thematically works with the film, but it's not what you might expect from a horror film.
Right.
There's not much like blood and guts or gore or horror even at the end. It's kind of muted throughout. And the revelation of the guardian angel, I just think is like, oh, that's not what you would expect. So I think for both reasons, that's 2 reasons to turn audiences away.
I agree.
Even though I liked it, but I think I think both things work against it for a general audience.
Yeah, and I think, again, not having seen how this was promoted overseas, I could see it being misrepresented as either a jump scare kind of film or a possession style film, and it's not really either one of those things.
Yeah.
I would say, other than the ritualistic elements and the ending, it's pretty much a drama and a character study until it goes south at the end.
Yeah. So for me, the thing I really appreciated about it is just the sense of dedication and authenticity in this ritual. So you got to sit there and stare at this rock for like however long. And the scene where like she starts peeing herself because she's like staying in one spot.
Yeah.
And the thing that I've struggled the most with was the drinking of the blood.
Oh, I know.
Like you see him like pour his blood into a cup and she's got to drink it multiple times. And that scene was a hard watch. I was like, oh, that even now I'd seen it 4 times. Really turned my stomach. So the dedication required from her and just the length she's willing to go to and how kind of extreme they were. And the, just.
Yeah, totally.
All of that I really bought into.
Yeah, the blood drinking was pretty visceral for me too. It was like, does he say it's starting to congeal? You better drink it. And it's just like, oh my God, that's brutal.
And they like the sounds and So I think it's those sort of more subtle but consistent horror elements that creates just that mood and atmosphere, but there's no big like payoff.
Yeah, that's true. And I think like so many of the films that we really enjoy, it's not a good horror film. It's just a good film.
Yes.
It's good filmmaking.
Yeah.
I don't think they pander to the audience. They don't try to explain everything away. They give you enough information that you go, okay, I know what's going on here. But I never felt like, I guess the first time I wondered, okay, well, what's happening at the ending here? Because it comes pretty fast and furious at the end.
Mm-hmm. Did you get the sense that in the bathtub that he actually had killed her?
Yes.
And then brings her back to life? Okay, yeah. Like that part's pretty hardcore too.
It is, because he's already made his downward decline at that point. He's drinking.
Yeah. And he says at the top, like, I need to detox because I'm like an alcoholic. So even that element was interesting too. Just how flawed of a character he is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I'll do this for you, but I gotta sit over here.
And again, because you're always questioning, or I'm always questioning his motives. Is like, okay, are you serving some kind of personal perverse need?
Which I think he is, because he references ritualistic sex at the beginning multiple times.
Yeah.
Like, there's going to be ritualistic sex, and then he tries to introduce that element, and then you realize, oh, this is just for your own gratification. That's not actually a required component. So he's already kind of setting that up in advance. Because I was wondering, is that a moment of weakness? But no, that was a pre-calculated move.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
And again, it also, I guess the beauty of this is that it seems like he might be serving his own needs, but it also makes total sense that if she's been lying, he has to purify her. Yeah. Like that's a baptism.
Yeah.
Basically, right? And he has to resurrect her. So in the context of the rituals, his reasoning makes sense.
Yeah.
But because of how they've created his character, there's always a niggle for me. It's like, are you really doing that for the ritual, or are you doing it for yourself? So
I love her subtle way of getting revenge too, when she pisses in his soup and gets it. Just like, oh, well played. Well played.
So anything else to say about this film other than, I mean, obviously we both really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. In terms of spoilers, obviously, like, her journey is important. The guardian angel, the drinking of the blood, the sexual manipulation. Yeah, I think. I
mean, you easily could have called this Angels and Demons.
Yes.
It would have been a very different film than the Tom Hanks version.
Very different.
But yeah, I just think that this is such a good niche film. It does things so well. It doesn't lead you down the primrose path and make you think, okay, well, it's going to be this kind of film. It's, for me, it kept me on my toes the whole time. It's like, where are they going with this? And I really enjoyed that part of the film.
And I just feel it's so unique. Like, I can't think of any other film that is portraying like these demonic rituals in such a way that is this off. Like, most of the times, oh, there's a jump scare in the mirror and some spirit, like some stupid CG thing. Like, so many people try to attempt this and they cheapen it so much with the same tired cliches and techniques, and to just like go all in on this concept of this black magic ritual, which you're literally going to do for an hour and a half, and the lengths that she has to go to. Like, I can't think of another film that does it like this.
No.
And I really appreciate that. And I bought into that. And for me, that's what makes it awesome.
Yeah, me too. And I come back to what I already said, which is that they don't pander to the audience. They don't say, okay, well, I'm going to throw you a bone. Here's a jump scare. Here's this. It's like, no, they go all in on the idea of, no, this is a ritual and it's not, instant gratification. You got to work hard to get, and I think, and I'm not suggesting that's a bad thing at all. I think the audience, you have to engage, you have to work with this. It's not a popcorn film in the same way that a Freddy is a fun time. This really digs deep and gets you thinking about some pretty serious stuff.
But there's so few horror films, I feel like, that do this on this level. And so at the time, I just was really impressed.
Yeah.
I was along for that ride. And I then was very interested in the director. And I found that he directed a few episodes of Bly Manor.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't come across that.
And I'd skipped Bly Manor because I kind of heard mixed things.
Yeah, it wasn't a big draw for me.
Did you watch it?
I didn't finish it.
Okay. So now I'm kind of curious, like, oh, maybe I should give Bly Manor a shot because I really appreciate what he does here. And,
I think for me, Bly Manor was, I thought it was going to be more of Hill House, and it was quite different.
Well, I've heard it's a slow burn.
Yeah.
But this is also a slow burn.
Yes.
So if he's doing the things he's doing here, then maybe I would like it.
I think it requires another look from me because I think, again, I went in with the expectation that it would be...
You're going to get another Hill House. Yeah.
And so that slow build was like, I don't know if I have the patience for this in that moment in time.
Because I think like this, I've heard people say good things about Bly Manor, but I think the general audience didn't like it.
Exactly.
For the same reason they might not like this. So,
exactly. Yeah. But definitely thumbs up from us. I think if you're, we've said enough about if you like this style of film, I think this is right up your alley. If you know that, no, I'm actually going in looking for these things and we didn't mention them, then probably give it a pass, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a special film, but for a niche audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the initiated, it's there. All right. Well, that's it. So this is episode 5 of episode 5 of season 5.
Yeah.
And hopefully you've had a chance to watch our 50th, which was a bit of a departure because we had a special guest on and we kind of talked about what makes a horror film a horror film.
It's actually episode 4, season 5, but that's okay.
Which one? Did I say what it was?
You said 5.
Oh, this is episode 4. Episode 4. You're right. Yes, you're right. So the 50th is not episode 5. Was episode 2.
That's right.
Okay, there you go. Now that you're equally confused to me, we can carry on. So what's our next film coming up? It's a throwback.
It is The Lost Boys.
Yes.
From the 80s. And oh man, is the 80s.
I can't wait to hear what Mike has to say about this one because I saw this in the theaters in the 80s and then I've seen it quite a few times since. So
I was 4. I did not see it in the theater.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay, so we will see you on the next one. And until then,
see you in the aisles.